welcome back to Total Disclosure as my phone falls off the counter. Welcome to Total Disclosure across all platforms, where we explore the mysteries of the unknown. From sightings to conspiracy theories, we dive deep into the unexplained occurrences in our skies and on the ground. If you're passionate about exploring the idea of the unknown and you're intrigued by the possibility of extraterrestrial life, then you're in the right place. Hit that like button, share the show with your friends, your family, the grays. I don't discriminate. And ring that notification bell so you don't miss any future uploads. We have got some amazing stuff in the works for this month. We're looking at different studios. I think we finally have come to like a semi arrangement with the gentleman who owns the studio. And the first video we'll be producing from that studio down the road will be our conversation with Mr. or Congressman Tim Burchett later this month, right before what we're hearing is November hearings, and I'm not so sure about that. But today's guest, it's all about today's guest. And this is a person I respect, I hold in high regard, and I want to welcome to the show Mr. Bob McGwier. Well, hello, Bob.
Hello, and hey, I'll call my mother later. Let you tell her how much you.
Yeah. Please do. Please, I would love that. That's awesome. So, Bob, you've been on the show before. You and your lovely wife. And so, just for everybody that maybe they forgot, can you give us a brief intro on who you are, how you got into the field?
Sure. So I had a few weird experiences between ages 0 and 18, with the last one being not at 18, an hour and a half of missing time. And during this hour and a half of missing time, I was with my girlfriend at the time. We were headed home from college, and something happened. So I had no idea what missing time was or any explanation for what happened. I thought I had gotten road hypnosis and managed not to wreck. So we went home, told everybody sorry we got lost, whatever, and didn't think about it. But over the next 2 weeks, I kept getting these serious urges. And finally, at the end of 2 weeks, I said, look, I'm in the wrong place. I need to change universities and change majors. And here's what I want to do. And my dad said, hey, that's great. You pay for this year and we'll see after that. So I changed schools. I got a job pumping gas, and I majored in mathematics and electrical engineering and got a dual degree. But after the first semester, where I made all A's, he paid. I mean, he was a tough customer, and he paid the tuition for me and my brother. We had to work to pay for the place we lived in. So my dad was a great man, but he was pretty strict. Okay.
Hard-handed.
So after doing the engineering and math, I went off to work at Sandia National Labs, and realized while I was there for a year that the only people that got respect in the 1970s in a technical field had a PhD. So I looked around, I applied all over the place, and I got admitted to the applied mathematics program at Brown University. And I moved up there and stayed there 4 years while I worked on my degree. Got taught quantum field theory by a Nobel laureate, Leon Cooper, and famous mathematicians and famous computer scientists were around me all the time. My courses in computer science were taught to me by the world famous Don Knuth, who was major in the early days in the architecture of algorithms and analysis of them. So anyway, I had a great education. I left there and went to work for the United States government, doing intelligence work on behalf of the intelligence community, sometimes sitting at a contractor, sometimes sitting at the agency, but it was easy to go back and forth during those days. So my career was interesting. So in 2010, I was asked to work on a major problem for the intelligence community at Oak Ridge National Labs. I went down there, spent a year, and came back and realized I think I would like to leave what I'm doing and go work at Virginia Tech as the chief scientist and director of research for a new institute that was founded by Ted Hume and his wife. Ted Hume was the last of the directors of the Office of Science and Technology at the CIA that was anonymous. So I worked for him. He had left the CIA and had gone to start a company that was bought out by Kinetic. And with that largesse, he endowed this institute at Virginia Tech, where I stayed for 10 years. It's now by far the most well-funded research entity at Virginia Tech, and it's gone from a center to a national security institute, and just the electrical lab person I hired, who I knew was a superstar, came in, and his lab, which started with 5 people, now has its own building and hundreds working for it. I mean, it was the most successful, massive research facility growth you can imagine. And I just feel lucky because we had no idea if it was going to work. But the purpose was take scientists, engineers, and other people and introduce them to the kinds of work they would see if they went inside and worked in the intelligence community for DOD or the contractors. And so I had a ton of great work. And so that went on fine. But at the end of that, in 2019, after hearing about UFOs inside and seeing evidence for a couple of years, I joined the Richard Dolan Forum and gobbled down all his books and listened to everything he had to say. And I heard him interview Chris Bledsoe in 4 one-hour episodes. And following that, I requested to Chris, who lived an hour and a half from me in North Carolina, would I be allowed to come over and visit? Because I wanted to see the stuff. And since I'm a scientist, maybe I could do something that would help him. So I went over, and we had experiences. Gigantic orbs flew over our head. We had flash bulbs popping in the trees and then up in the sky. We had weird, like your purple aura in your background. The sky was covered with this purple haze. It looked like it was the surface of a pond. And then all of a sudden it disappeared. And Chris knew without looking, they were gone, and said we could go inside. We went inside, concluded our visit. Then I went home, and the hitchhiker followed me home. And over the next 2 weeks, I had multiple hitchhiker-style things, including seeing craft, have apports of water that looks like somebody was squirting me in the face with a squirt gun right in the middle of my home. So I called Chris and told him I would help him. I did. I went to a UFO conference, aiding Chris to give his first full PowerPoint presentation with his evidence, which I got to look through all of, and we picked out what is, and I helped him write it and all this other stuff. So as a result, we became close friends. But the end of the story is, like many who go see Chris and are involved and grow into a trusting relationship, I had experiences not unlike what he has, not to the same degree and not identical. But the real thing is, before going to see Chris, I had 3 heart attacks, which I survived nicely with a full coronary bypass. So COVID hit, the university was going to close for over a year, and I didn't want to sit there and do nothing, so I retired. And after all the hoopla of me retiring, I moved away, and the experiences followed me to my new home. But before I went, I had my cardiovascular surgeon do a scan of my heart and do all the tests you need. So he quickly determined, after asking me what in the heck had I done, I told him just been living my life and taking the medicine you gave me and eating right. So he says, well, I cannot detect any damage to your heart. It is back to 100% output, and you have the heart of what looks to me like a 30-year-old. And so, hey, what can I say? Here we are. It's been experiences nonstop since. My mother passed away 2 years later, Lala Bright offered to give me a reading. She gave me a reading, and that's when I absolutely knew that this stuff of people being mediums and other things, for some people, is absolutely real, totally real. I've told the story plenty of times. I won't belabor it, but anyway, it was totally real. And so she and I grew close after we started a business, and I moved to Maryland, and we now live together, where we are inundated with activity.
Right. And what I want to bring up is now I want to talk to you about Chris Bledsoe, and your time with him, because we're gonna have some very deep conversations tonight. But I want to start with, I mean, I've talked to Chris, just on Facebook. I've been trying to get him on the show. I know he's got some contracts and stuff like that. He did agree that he would come on. It's all about timing. And I know eventually I'll be able to sit down and talk with him. But what I want to talk about with you and your relationship with Chris is you went into this with what seems to be a technological kind of nuts and bolts mindset, and came out of it with maybe a different perception of reality.
That's extremely astute of you, because I went as a scientist and engineer and left as one of Chris Bledsoe's best friends, and no longer acting like a scientist. I'm not trying to gather data for him or anything like. He has plenty of weird people around him from government and other entities that are doing all that, including having, I believe, I don't know for a fact, but I believe, given what happened, that they bugged his home while I was there. They listened to me describe a detailed experiment that would prove to the government of his ability to interact with the entities, given he had shown me evidence that no one else had seen, and he was not supposed to show, because this person had a federal job as a security officer and didn't want to get out. So they did the experiment, and I'll just describe it quickly. The guys go out in the field someplace unknown to Chris. He has no idea who they are. Mm-hmm. They have no idea who is the subject of the experiment. So the controllers of the experiment, who don't know either end. So it's a double blind experiment. They don't know either end. So the one in the middle says, okay, the people are set up, do your thing. And Chris asks the entity to find them and show up in front of their cameras. And they did within a few seconds. And after that, all hell broke loose on the government wanting to know everything about him.
And isn't that peculiar? So that's when, because we hear about, this guy from NASA showing up at Chris. Yes. And Tim is suspected to be the person or Tyler in Diana Pasulka's books. Now, no one can confirm that aside from her and maybe a trusted few, but I think the community is starting to put the dots together. Because if you look at what's happening with Chris, I mean, 500-600 years ago, they would label him a saint.
Okay, so let me explain to you where we are now. In the talk I did with him, using his data in 2020, he showed pictures of Tim Taylor at his daughter Emily's graduation, and with Chris at NASA, and standing in the door where astronauts come out. So, and Tim got to go in and sit in the astronauts conference room with Chris. So I don't think it's a secret anymore. Chris is just not going to say Tim's name out loud, but I can tell you for a fact, Tim Taylor has been in evidence that Chris has displayed publicly. Where else do we want to go? Oh, yes. Okay. Final thing. So I didn't know whether to take Tim Taylor seriously or not. I mean, I knew that he had a security clearance, and I knew it was high, and he has a bunch of security clearances that through the classified system where you can look up people,
Mhm.
to see if they're okay for you to talk to. He had a bunch of clearances that I couldn't even see. Okay, so what this meant to me was he was highly cleared and had the ability to do stuff. So I found a piece of evidence when I was doing Chris's talk that it took me a couple of months to figure out what it meant. And here's the deal. It's a picture of an envelope with half an address on it, and on top of the envelope is laid a napkin. The napkin has the presidential seal on it and marked as from Camp David. It is illegal to copy that and put it on anything. So that was official. The envelope displayed half of Chris Bledsoe's address.
Oh my God.
The inescapable conclusion is that Tim Taylor had taken Chris's stories and in an invitation by the only person who could, when we had our last black president, invited him to Camp David, and Chris's story was told to the president of the United States.
I mean, that is monumental. So, and we've even seen. So, did you see the episodes of that series? Oh my God, I just dropped everything. Did you see the episodes they did with Chris on that series Beyond Skinwalker Ranch?
Oh yeah, especially with the thing that was most interesting to me, of course, is the results of the EEG they did on him. So he has an extremely unusual EEG. Others may have seen this when Dr. What's-His-Name did it on Tyler Henry. Both Chris and Tyler Henry have exactly the same EEG patterns when they're doing their paranormal or consciousness activity. So he had both had a sleeping brain and a highly active brain at the same time. And it's really weird.
Yeah, they said, and if I'm misquoting it, strike me down, but I'm pretty sure they were saying that the way his delta waves were coming out, it was like he was a monk, a trained meditator, but his brain was also highly active in another wave set. So, and I mean, you see him on camera literally point, and then you know, I know Brandon Fugel, you know, and some of the other team, a lot of footage from that show gets thrown onto the floor. People think they fake stuff. They don't. The editing company, Prometheus, of course, is going to dramatize things. It's a TV show at the end of the day, but the data sets that we're getting from it, I think, are valuable.
Well, that is the contractual arrangement, which I know about. Right. Is that they do the science, the other team gets to do videography and whatever, but they are not allowed to interfere with the science collection at all, and nobody at the ranch will lie for the TV.
Mm-hmm. And that's so. And Beyond Skinwalker, you have a trained CIA agent and Andy Bustamante, who I've come to really, really admire, and well, I want to get him on the show. But they were saying, so I was listening to a conversation with him, and he was like, I mean, as soon as Chris pointed, they looked, and there was just these orbs coming through the trees, and apparently Chris has done this with multiple people. We're talking like people like Jim Semivan, who, I mean, Jim arguably is one of the first dominoes, you know, that fall that lead to the New York Times article in itself. And
just for your information, the only reason I got to go to Chris's is Jim Semivan told Chris to allow me in.
Right. So Jim is a very important character in all this. So what is your relationship with Jim Semivan?
So I did operations pretty much all over the world for about a decade. And Jim Semivan was a senior leadership in the clandestine service.
So that's where you guys cross paths.
Well, I didn't know him until later. We can email exchange each other now, but I did not know him personally way back then. I was
Right.
too junior to be rubbing elbows with him.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. So, so with Chris, like I said, it seems like you come out like most people do with saying, I think I have reality wrong. Like, I think I have it wrong, like fundamentally. Cause I mean, and I've been talking about this a lot lately, but we're raised in a world, and especially scientists, right? That I mean, this I can see, feel, touch. I mean, hell, I could go a step further and taste this if I really want to be gross. I could smell it. This is real. It's black and white. It's right in front of me. Can't be mistaken, right? But
So,
right, exactly. We're taught that the world is black and white, but it's not till later we realize that there's so much gray.
so let me tell you how, as a scientist, I know this. Donald Hoffman is a cognitive scientist at the University of California, and he has proven a mathematical theorem resulting from application of the game theory of evolution to show that entities that perceive actual reality are not selected by evolution. What evolution selects is the gain function increase that preserves your longevity and allows you to breed. So the facts are our perceptual system integrated to wherever our consciousness resides does not perceive reality.
Right.
We live in an illusion.
So, and the implications, does it, and people ask all the time, are we living in a simulation? This, that, and the other thing. Well, does it matter?
So living in an illusion just means you don't see everything you might see to know what the actual reality is. Living in a simulation, it's really hard to get there if you believe in nothing. So because someone, something, some entity capable of computation and manipulation has to be running the simulation.
Right. The observer of the because we talk about the double slit experiment, for instance. I mean,
I just call
arguably,
it the universal consciousness, and I do that because Donald Hoffman does.
right. So do you think that okay, so we talk about how there may not be, so a tree falls in the woods, does anyone hear it? Well, some people say the tree doesn't exist unless an observer is there. Are you trying to say that there is an ultimate observer that keeps that's why reality is reality the way it
I
is?
think we're wildly entangled with other consciousnesses as they are instantiated in our space-time. So together we communally make what we observe as our space-time reality. So yes.
So, okay. And now could that be manipulated?
Absolutely. So look, Donald Hoffman has not yet proven everything yet, but he has a really interesting view that universal consciousness, which is the basis for everything we see and around us comes from the universal consciousness, like God on high making it. Okay. So we are distillations through a very narrow funnel of everything that's going on in the universal consciousness, and our perception, call it our screen with our icons and all that stuff on it, is how we perceive space-time, and it's projecting a signal onto our screen for us to view. But it is a very restricted pipe of information from the universal consciousness, which is everything down to our little piece of it, which is us, our ego. And and from that, he can derive, he calls them decorated permutations. He has dynamics. He has a mathematical model. All this other stuff. But it's pretty wild and hard to read if you don't have a lot of training. Just say he's got a model. He's trying to make fit and get physics out of the model. Okay. So and what he shows is given that that's reality, the universal consciousness is required to make it all function.
And so would that make, because I've had this talk with other folks, and so the same way that you can take a radio, right? You can smash up the radio with a bat, you can throw it off a building and it smashes to pieces, right? But the signal's still coming through, right? Our bodies or our brain, could it be is it a receiver? And yes, the body does die eventually, but the signal, I mean, it doesn't go away. It just returns.
That is my personal belief. And so a lot of what I do now is try to catch some science of that, showing that's actually what's going on.
Which would make it would make so much sense. I mean,
everybody should read Dean Radin's work. It's approachable. He has over 100 papers in peer-reviewed journals about how consciousness is real and how we can affect physics with our consciousness and so forth and so, including down to particle physics. So that's Dean Radin, and then Ingo Swann wrote about 20-something books, and everybody who cares about consciousness should go read them.
Why won't science, being someone of science, why won't science tackle consciousness? Why they won't even breathe the word?
I have an answer. It's really straightforward. Same reason they don't attack UFOs and other things. I'm a scientist. I'm at a university or a research institution. I want a lab. I want people to work in my lab. I want students. They cost money. If I can't get somebody to fund my lab and my work, it ain't gonna happen because I need it to survive. There are no funding sources to investigate UFOs in a serious way, or a funding source to investigate consciousness in a serious way, though that is slowly changing.
Slowly. And I titled this show that we're at a pivotal moment in human history. And we talked a little bit before the camera started rolling, but would you, is it safe to agree, or is it safe to say that you agree that right now, I mean, I know a lot of generations, and I mean, you're older than I am. You've been through more, you've seen more, right? Just, I mean, by law of averages, right? You've seen more, you've been around longer. At least as far as we know, right? My consciousness may be ancient. Who knows? I don't know. But we seem to be at a point like no other in history. And in the next, I don't know, 6 months, year, I don't know. I can't really put a label on it, but we are going to choose our future and whether we have a sequel or not. If you want to kind of simplify it, how would you say the current geopolitical sphere is very scary?
It's very frightening. And look, I lived at the edge, the pointy tip of the sword of the geopolitical sphere for years, including doing stuff overseas that was weird. Okay, so my senses are attuned to the leaky signals coming out of institutions I used to work for and support, and I remember how they would formulate their expression of what was going on for the public when I was inside and knew everything that was going on. And I hear that going on now, and I'm worried.
Right.
I'm very worried that we are completely and totally ignoring what will be 2 billion refugees caused by climate change in the next decade. And we're sitting here ignoring it. I put gasoline in my car. I'm going to drive 1,000 miles this weekend. And it's just, and what alternative do I have? I'm not buying a piece of junk Tesla.
Right. Right. And I mean, we could go down that rabbit hole, but I mean, electric cars, I mean, they're not
They're not ready for prime time, though they are getting there.
right. Yeah, but and the minerals involved, how we're getting them, it's a little dicey. So it's also got to be cleaned up, but it's hopefully it's getting there, and hopefully we'll figure something out.
Well, the United States, after COVID, decided to clean up its act on supply chains, and it's finding alternative sources with our friends, even if it costs a little more, so we can avoid having to buy stuff from people we don't like.
Well, how in a society now? What if we were to find out that something such as a 0 point energy has been hidden from us? And I personally have gone through winters with my family when I was younger where we had no money for propane. So what we would do is boil water. We would uh, uh my mom would like turn the stove on and open the door to heat the house. I mean, if we went through all that, and I don't even have it hard, like my childhood, was rough, but there's people who have it much rougher. And if we find out one day that all these patents that have been seized by the patent office about that have to do with alternative energy devices, um, I mean, we're talking Civil War kind of attitude, like actual people people's lives and livelihood, so I mean, what UFOs, they have to be using, if we have them, like David Grush says, if all the evidence points to that we have some sort of crash retrieval program, if we have harnessed that energy, I mean, the implications of hiding it are they would spark a revolutionary war.
Yep. So if you'll, any of those who know that I'm Bob McGwier underscore N4HY on X Twitter, you can see that in the last week, I wrote a very, very long essay on what would happen if suddenly we got free energy available to everyone with no one in the way. And it's an analysis of all the things that would be impacted, positive and negative. It's not complete, but it's certainly a good start. And here's what I think are parts of the things that are in the way. Let's suppose suddenly we had the ability to give you, Tyler, a little cube that power everything you want on demand.
Right.
You're no longer buying power from
Company X. Yeah.
Pacific Electric or whatever. And I'm no longer buying from BG&E. Okay, so Baltimore Gas and Electric. So they're going to go broke. Gone. The oil companies going to go broke because they're no longer needed, except for lubrication and other things. Right. And it'll take time for all that to evolve, but this is truly destructive advancement in technology in that so much will go over, it won't be fun, and we better figure out how to manufacture and distribute it quickly so that people can switch over quickly, so that individual people can get on and get going with their lives, even though all these other energy sources will be failing, if such a thing were possible. But just the implications of what we have seen and observed from credible observers are that an unbelievable source of energy is available to produce what we observe.
Yeah, the proof of concept is every credible UFO sighting. That's the proof of concept right there. Because the accounts, they never say that these things were running on steam power or gasoline or making noises and combustion engine. No, it's always they skipped across the sky or looked like it was jumping through dimensions, skipping across the sky. That's
the thing that people should realize is the people that set up in the late 1940s the UFO secrets after the crash at Roswell are the same people that set up the secrets for the Manhattan Project.
Right.
And now the worst of the secrets, like this energy source or the energy required to propel the craft, etc., are classified at birth under the terms of the Atomic Energy Act.
Because anything that produces a radioactive signature, even if it's not from a source that of our own making, or whatever, that falls under that classification system from the DOE, which is maybe you know better, but does that fall under same? I feel like that's a different set of classifications. And
So it's under the Atomic Energy Act.
So yeah, but it's mainly without general oversight.
Well, they are allowed to have that stuff classified, and no one can demand to look at it with FOIA, and it is secured from oversight from Congress.
Right. And therein lies our problem, is the people that we represent, that we elect to represent us in government, they're trying their best, but I mean, look at things like and what I wanted to bring up, look at things like the Wilson Davis memo, right? The Wilson Davis memo has generated significant discussion in the UFO community. And I mean, you're looking at Rear Admiral Wilson in the EG&G parking lot, right? Saying that he can't get access to this information, this program, that and he has a need to know.
Yeah, but he's not on the bigot list.
Right, but you're not on the sir. You're not on the list. You could go to the president. You can go to whoever the fuck you want, but you're not gonna see what's behind the door because you don't have a need to know. So
And
they've successfully.
Then he got his career threatened.
Right, and so the Wilson Davis memo, and you have a kind of an interesting connection. So
my initial connection is it's really, really so weird. This is one synchronicity after another. So as I told you before, I got interested in UFOs from seeing stuff inside. I knew that Richard Dolan wrote about UFOs on the national security state. So I figured that was the easiest to read stuff and easiest way to figure out stuff. So I went there, and I became trusted and a trusted relationship with him. So I knew he was about to out the Wilson Davis document. It came through a circuitous route, but he got it, and he decided to blast it all over the world and told everybody about it. And of course, then there's years of denying its reality and so forth and so on. And so I retire, and I move to my retirement home. And during that move, I'm going through crap, figuring out what to throw out. And I found my daily journal from a time before all of this happened, in which I made a note about a friend of mine who worked at the National Reconnaissance Office, who was there while I was attending a conference, and asked me to come up and visit him in his office. And he showed me a letter he got from Wilson complaining about his problem, and did this guy have any way to help him gain access to the information? And I went, whoa. Wilson just retired as the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, and I was there for a Mayzent conference, which is run by the Defense Intelligence Agency. So I went, whoa. Okay, look, friend, let me tell you what you do. Here's what you do. You don't acknowledge that you even received this. You burn it as fast as you can. It's not marked classified, just burn it. Put it in the burn bag. And I left, but I made a note in my journal. And so I completely forgot about it. And then I found this note in my journal when I was deciding whether or not to throw it away. And there you go. So that was weird. And then Dolan comes out with this. I go to a conference in Huntsville for the SCU, and I'm sitting at the table with Linda Thompson, who is a well-known researcher in UFOs. And a person asked John Alexander about the Wilson Davis notes. And Eric Davis is sitting in the back of the room. John Alexander says, "Why are you asking me this? Back there is the author of the Wilson Davis notes. Go ask him." And so he was totally outed all over the world as the author of the Wilson Davis notes. And now Eric himself has claimed ownership.
So with those notes, do you, I'm just going to ask, are the notes genuine in your belief?
I believe in them 100%. Eric said they are.
Right. And I mean, even in the notes, I think Admiral Wilson says that, if this comes out, I'm going to deny it.
And he has every day since.
Yes. Even I believe that he's been reached out to, like by Arrow or whoever, and he basically told them, like, you can bring me in a skiff, you can ask me, I am going to tell you the same thing that I've told everybody. No comment. Like, didn't happen.
So if he has since signed some kind of non-disclosure agreement for this black program, in the non-disclosure agreement are requirements. The requirements are, if you are asked about this program by intent, reasoning for it, what you're working on, or the sponsor, you are required to tell the following lie.
Right.
And he signed the document.
And that's, and so being a person like yourself, do you think that's patriotic, or do you think that is hindering a serious effort? Because there is a line, and the UFO community, they don't really know when to. It's always instant gratification. I've been dealing with this, and I don't want to bring this up in a bad way, but I've been dealing with this one witness who has been seeing orbs, and honestly, his story is remarkable. And he kept asking me, can you put me in touch with Chris Bledsoe? Can you put me in touch with Chris Bledsoe? And I'm like, dude, I can't get Chris's attention for longer than 2 minutes myself. Like, I can't, he thinks that it sucked, because after I told him all that, I was like, listen, I'm having on Congressman, I'm having on Bob McGwier, I can do my best to get your word out, but it doesn't work the way you think it works. And now he labeled me compromised. He thinks that I'm working for the government.
No, they throw around. Look, I've listened to all this crap for a decade now. I just don't pay any attention to it. And there's a reason. There's a reason. Maybe some of the individuals you've named here answer every text message and every time I call, because I don't do this bullshit.
Right. And that honestly, that's what I love about you, man. And I love that I've been able to cultivate.
Well, let me thank my girlfriend for giving us a super sticker.
Oh, did she?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, honey. I was gonna say, if she wanted to hop on, she was more than welcome. But so and thank you, really, I really do appreciate any, because we're working on a film right now, Cursed Echoes, for everybody that is interested in the paranormal. I'm from Massachusetts, so we've connected a story about a haunted road in Billerica to the Salem, or I was going to say to the Salem, Massachusetts, to the Salem witch trials. And then from there, we were sent to the Bridgewater Triangle. Now, it kind of, you know what, I'll just do whatever, a little plug there. But what are your takes on hotspots?
They're real. So for whatever reason, she and I seem to be living in a hotspot. There's a lot of activity. But I think it's because we're close to Aberdeen Proving Grounds. And then Sedona, Arizona, gee willikers, that place is loaded with activity. Just people should go and follow Melinda Leslie and look at what she does. And if they get the opportunity, go on one of her UFO tours. And here's what I can guarantee you. You will see craft and orbs in the sky, or you'll get your money back. That's just the way it is. And she's living well.
Right? I had her on the show, and she invited me out there. She said, "Bring your camera, bring all your camera gear. We'll make it a little short documentary if you want." And I was like, "You're that?"
Well, I got to tell you what, that's a great offer because right now she is filming with. I'm gonna brain fart. He did Accidental Truth. And
Oh, Ron James from
Ron
Move
James.
On.
She and Ron
Yeah.
James are filming right now on the edge of Bradshaw Ranch over the mountain into this place where drones won't fly because they are forbidden by their firmware by the United States government for flying there. So they're filming military aircraft and UFOs working together going in and out of the ground. So Melinda did some research, and right on the edge of that property, which is clearly has a NOTAM enforced by firmware, there's a building.
Which, by the way, for anyone listening, this happens or watching. This happens like it's to prevent people from flying drones into like airports or army bases
or Air Force bases in Virginia that have not had a drone fly over them. Okay, let me finish the story.
Yeah, sorry.
So Melinda is a researcher. So she researched because there was a connection between Bradshaw and a cement factory on the other side of the mountain. I won't go into, but go look at Beyond Skinwalker Ranch and you'll figure it out. But she did a background search on the property that cement factory is on. And
guess who it's owned
by Lockheed Martin.
Yep. And for anyone who doesn't know or has been living under a rock, Lockheed Martin is a company, it's an aerospace company that has long had dealings with the military and been a very, very highly scrutinized company from the UFO community since most people point the finger saying that they have
they're involved.
They're involved in the cover up.
I know they're involved.
Yeah, and Eisenhower, I mean, we see it start to happen, right? The cover up start to happen. I mean, right after Roswell, right? Months later, the National Security Act, the sweeping National Security Act happens.
Well, that was 52, and that's after the overflight of the Capitol.
Exactly.
Truman freaked out.
People forget. People always say that notion, like, well, why don't they just land on the White House lawn? Well, they practically fucking did.
And Truman blew a gasket.
Yes. So would you be willing to tell that story?
Yeah. Well, so 2 weekends in a row, multiple UFOs fly right over the Washington Monument, close to the White House, and then over the Capitol. And the United States Air Force, through multiple air bases, including the ones that did not have a drone fly over them, flew interceptors up there to find the things. And the things ran away from them like they were gnats. Okay, so Truman, almost immediately after that, sits down with help from Edward Condon, Vannevar Bush, you get the idea, write the national security rules. And so they authored the National Security Act. They found Central Intelligence Agency from the remnants of the OSS from World War II. Mm-hmm. And they formed shortly after that in 54 the National Security Agency, whose job is to read other people's messages and to collect signals and to encrypt our stuff so other people can't read it. And on and on. They built the national security community during the Truman administration using the National Security Act and the Atomic Energy Act and so forth. Truman was paranoid and he was very secretive.
And I actually just did a video. It's on YouTube. I'll put it like a little thing right here. I did a video about what if Truman used Roswell as a political stage, or not a political stage, but he, instead of covering it up, announced that we are not alone to try to bring humanity together. and what the implications of that could look like. So it was a fun video to do, but in fact, in our reality, that's not what happened. It was the exact opposite. They tightened everything down, and like you said, I mean, Condon himself, who wrote the Condon report, there's a bunch of scandal there when you look at it there, because he had been stripped of his Q clearance right around the same time as Oppenheimer, yet and he had wrote the Atomic Secrecy Act.
Well, he was reinstated.
Right, reinstated to come and then write the UFO stuff. Like, red flag or no? So
it's a red flag. It's a red flag. And Lewis, what's his name, Strauss, he hated Oppenheimer, and he and Condon, the others who didn't want Oppenheimer to get all the credit for doing the UFO stuff, decided to get him out of there and block him for ever having access again.
Absolutely. So that kangaroo court, was it really about nuclear technology, or was it about something else?
He afforded them the opportunity by covering up a friend of his and his brother's affiliations during the time of the craziness, the Red Scare.
Right.
McCarthy hearing times.
Right. And, someone who I think is doing really great work right now is, maybe him, Jesse Michaels.
Yeah. Okay, he's doing great.
He's doing amazing work, and he's been really helping me and myself connect dots. And do you think Oppenheimer knew more about UFOs than we know?
I think Oppenheimer set up the original scientific work on the UFO under the Atomic Secrecy Act, structured just like the Manhattan Project. And then he ran afoul politically of a bunch of people, and they wanted him out, and they took it over.
Right. So, and that would, because we talked about this at the beginning of the show, how the Atomic Act, this Atomic Secrecy Act, it didn't just cover nuclear, like our own nuclear technology. It covered anything with a radioactive signature. So we talk about Rendlesham, we talk about other Socorro, New Mexico, we talk Corona, New Mexico, all these things. I mean, if they gave off any radiation whatsoever, which tends to be the case, they automatically are classified and sectored and sequestered away. So
Hal Puthoff has given a talk about what it would look like around a warp bubble around a UFO. And so anything has black body radiation. Some of it is infrared and other things. But after it goes through the time distortions other than the gravitational field around a craft through a warp bubble, it will have Doppler shifted much higher a frequency until it is ugly radiation. That's all we need to classify it under the Atomic Energy Act.
My God, it's so easy. It's just so easy to cover everything up. And that's what people don't realize is people don't think that the military and the U.S. government can keep secrets, but they can. And arguably, this is the biggest story never told. Right.
Well, if the recent stories are right, there's only 800 people on the entire bigot list, and that may be exaggerated because it's probably gotten smaller.
Yeah, right.
800 people know the secrets.
I have no doubt in my mind. This came up in the last podcast I did with Samuel Chong, but he thinks that those 800 people that do know, that it is a global operation, no borders. There's no Russian, Chinese. I mean, yes, they have nationality, but this group of people transcend government and societal law in general. They don't have to adhere to the laws that you and I adhere to. They are above the law in most cases.
I don't know how much people believe in Richard Doty, but Richard Doty has said that
Yep.
for years and years, we and the Russians have worked together and exchanged information at the scientific level on these things. We have gone to their places and they have come to ours.
Because, and it would make sense if I was a superpower, and okay. Let's break it down even further. If I was company A and company B was across the street, right? And we were competitors, but there was something that was interfering with maybe this is a bad, I think I did a bad analogy here. So let's just keep it with countries. But if I was the US and I had nuclear weapons and I was Russia and you also have nuclear weapons and we can end the world together with a simple miscalculation, I'd want to get ahead of that problem and say, hey, these UFOs, are you seeing them too? Because we don't want to think it's each other and blow the world up.
Well, you should know then that the treaty that Nixon and Brezhnev signed from the START treaty, Strategic Arms Reduction talks, their first treaty has the UFO clause in it and establishes the hotline.
So that would get them on the phone. And so, because there's been instances, for instance, had Robert Salas on the show. Now, a lot of people, they have criticisms of him. Some, it's the UFO community. So I think everyone has one side and the other, right?
In his case, I just ignore all that.
Yes.
He's telling the truth.
He's fucking telling the truth, guys. There's no doubt in my mind. And I had to go through stages of interviews with his wife just to get him to talk to me, because his wife is so sick of people playing gotcha, getting him on a show and then trying to back him into a corner. And I think that is if you're a podcast and you do stuff like that, walk the doors that way, walk out. Because if you're like the Stephen Green streets, just please leave us alone. Like we're better off.
Well, it's hard to do when they're paid not to leave you alone.
Yeah, I guess that's a good. Oh man, and it's really like I would be hard pressed to say that we know the government has infiltrated UFO groups in the past to kind of sow disinformation, right? So when someone like David Grush comes out, for instance, a very highly decorated, beyond measurable in credibility, when he comes out and says these groundbreaking things in front of Congress,
under oath,
sitting next to two of the bravest people to be able to sit next to him, Commander Fravor, arguably that guy is Top Gun Maverick, that he is Tom Cruise from Top Gun Maverick. And then Ryan Graves, who's been, he was in the military, his crew, he didn't see them, but they were seeing them on radar. His crew absolutely dealt with these things on a daily basis. He's become a huge advocate for public safety and commercial airline safety, military airline safety. So when they sat there and they gave those powerful statements under oath, more people were watching the Johnny Depp trial. That's a joke.
Wow.
That's a joke. Are you kidding me?
I think people are living in ignorance is bliss. They don't understand what's at stake. They don't understand the implications. They don't understand how much our world can change. What appears to me to be hidden is technology that frees everyone from any form of want, except the love of someone.
Right. That's the only thing that can't be taken it transcends both time, space. And that's I know I was jumping into like the woo right now, but there's something about like the ancient cultures and um love. It's the ultimate tool against evil. And I know that sounds weird, but some things have happened lately to show me that it is true. It is. It is absolutely true. So what we have to do is we have to stop falling into these social algorithms that are fed to us on our phone, right? People aren't getting the news anymore, Bob. They're
No,
getting
they're getting
their
manipulated by algorithms that
and it's
that force dopamine release, so you're abducted.
thank you so much,
I'll pay for it later, I promise.
Yeah, he's gonna have to slide her 20 and be like, yeah. So no, thank you so much. And actually, you know what? Maybe we could have her on in a future episode.
That'd be great.
I would love to do that because I want to talk to a medium because when I was in Salem and I was interviewing the witches, self-proclaimed. I'm not calling these women witches. They're self-proclaimed witches. I'm very lucky. I got to do my interviews in Salem. The backdrop is the witches memorial where that's where you go if you go to Salem. Like that's the thing everyone wants to see is the gravestones. And like that's the backdrop of all my interviews. I got really lucky, and so I'm interviewing these witches and mediums and all these people. And they kept telling me, and my girlfriend was there, some of it's on camera, that a tidal wave is coming. A tidal wave is coming. And when I asked for clarification, the medium said it's not like an actual tidal wave, but it's a tidal wave of information. It's and she wouldn't go further because she didn't want to speculate. And anything further than that, she would have been speculating, and
Right.
she didn't want to. And you know what? That set her up in my eyes as like, okay, like this lady doesn't want to speculate what that could mean. She doesn't want to get it wrong. She doesn't want to make predictions. She doesn't want to go past what she's seeing. So it gave her more credibility than she'd already earned. What do you think about that? Do you think we're on that precipice, like we've talked about? We're at change of human history.
Just look around you. We have several different things teetering on a ledge. One wrong move in the world is going to push a bunch of things over the edge, and we're going to have to deal with it. I also don't want to speculate because I don't want to make people fearful when I don't have firsthand knowledge. And literally, I'm not on the inside anymore. But I got to tell you what, I have friends that live near military bases. They're seeing activity that you can't believe. Lala and I live near Aberdeen Proving Grounds. They are blowing up the earth over there testing stuff. I mean, it's amazing. This house rattles 2 or 3 days a week from all the testing. And so something is happening. They shoot actual weapons over there, artillery, drop bombs, etc.
So live fire.
Live fire. It shakes the whole house.
My God.
Yep.
And so things now, why would that be? Thank you. It's okay. You're allowed in. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yep.
I was getting a little
dry
thirsty.
mouth?
Yeah, a little dry mouth. So I had. Thank you, Jess.
So look, regularly we go to our stockpiles, bring out exemplars, and test them to make sure they're still working.
Right. It's efficiency. It's how we keep things. That's why, Russia's seeing a huge problem because of the Chinese weaponry.
And Korean. The Korean crap. The Korean crap they got.
Yeah.
That's all right. Ukraine did them a favor. They blew up 30,000 tons of it.
Mm-hmm. Did you see recently, not even a couple, not, I wouldn't even say it was a couple of days ago. This might have been within the last 24 hours. But Israel, Iran lobbed like 180 missiles to the Iron Dome. And I mean, things are getting, I mean, I don't want to say it out loud, but if a certain country were to make a move on Taiwan, I am really, and I'm genuinely fucking fearful. Like, it's emotional. I am generally fearful that that the greedy, the 1%, like, people don't realize the same people that have the contracts to blow these places up somehow have the contracts to clean it up and rebuild it. Guys, we're being fucking played.
Well, except in the case of China, Xi has a single person cult of personality dictatorship.
Yes.
And he has announced that in 2026 he's going to take Taiwan. What can we do but take him at his word?
Literally. We have
Really,
to.
that's all we got. So we are doing very provocative things. We're stationing special forces on the island of Taiwan. We basically have talked Japanese into unleashing. They have expeditionary forces and they're going to be able to project power. The Philippines, they're letting us back on the island. We're putting all sorts of stuff on those islands. And it is clear that what we intend is when China launches the Armada, whether it's drones or missiles or ships or whatever, they can't take the island without taking people.
Yeah.
So we will largely sink their entire force.
Yeah.
But they will do a lot of damage to Taiwan before that happens because they're going to try to bomb it into submission.
Exactly. Exactly. So, and you know what's weird? It's a weird connection, but in the 90s, this and we are, and I hate to say this, but strategically, we made a stupid move. A stupid move by not keeping an eye on, throughout this whole Afghanistan thing, we had our heads so focused on the war on terror that we didn't realize that we didn't, because back in the 90s when China would get iffy or they would, get a little spunk in them, all we had to do as a nation was send the Princeton, that group, the Nimitz battle group. We would just send it into the strait right there, and we would just park it, and China would see that and go, "Oh,
but
okay,
nothing. I want to tell you right now, nothing's gotten better for them. There's a 15-mile wide strait through which they receive all the raw materials they need to survive, from whatever they would need to manufacture stuff to fuel, and they export all the material they manufacture, etc. So they can't get food or supplies that last longer than, they probably have 3 months stockpile, but we could interdict right there and they would be starving in 3 months.
yeah." And they're young. They're having a huge problem with their young people right now.
Oh yeah, they're in the FU mode.
Yeah,
I call it the ethic movement because they're sitting at home going ethic.
This is bullshit. And you know what? The Korean people, like the North Korean people, need to snap out of it. They also need to snap out of this. This, I don't know. Like,
they're gonna have to be pushed and helped. And
yeah.
I don't know whether it's worth it.
And so, what could UFOs do to unite the world? What's the future? Could you see a future in which UFOs and just disclosure in general like, we all need to have that Edgar Mitchell moment when we're coming back from the moon and we look upon the earth and we see that there's no borders, there's nothing but a pale blue, perfect, beautiful planet. That's what we need that as a society.
Yeah, I think
So
so. If I were wanting them to interdict anything, it would be to render unusable every nuclear weapon on Earth. That would send a message that no one can deny.
that would be, oh my God, would that send shivers? Do you, but do you, I just choked on that a little bit. That went, yeah, I took a sip and that almost choked on it. But do you also think that that might send the wrong, because we have to look at intent here. Um, because the leaders of the world now, neutrality looks a lot different than hostility. But in our eyes, the human perspective, neutrality from them may seem hostility. It may
Well,
seem like,
they've already done that. They went up over the Minot Air Force Base and
I
the other
know.
missile fields and shut down our missiles.
And
They went to Russia and started their missiles.
I was to say they turned them on. So that to me is a clear indicator, right?
But
I mean,
the only follow up is letting it sink in how powerful they are.
yes. And do you
That
think
we
that
know about, that we the public know.
right? Do you think that that is why there hasn't been a nuclear exchange? And I mean, there's only ever really been one or two, I should say. Do you think that the UFOs kind of did the job and actually got to the objective was achieved, where they kind of hinted at it, like, hey, at any moment.
I don't know, but I can tell you, I believe is that corruption in Russia and China is basically doing their job for them. We have all these
Okay.
intelligence reports said that a bunch of missiles in China were tested and the tanks were filled full of water.
Yeah, because they were the people that were the mercenaries were siphoning off the gas and selling the gas.
And not fueling them with solid propellant. They were pocketing it and filling it full of sawdust. I mean, they were just not doing anything. When you run a corrupt economy, but that's your method of control. Expect the people to behave like you do. Corrupt.
Right, you're only going to get a mirror of
you can see the corruption in the Russian army in Ukraine right now. Ukraine has no right to be able to stop an army that people thought existed before Russia mounted their attack.
Right, because and you know, a lot of people say, oh, you know, what if these, you know, like people in like idiots, that all this UFO stuff is, yeah, it's got to be Russian technology or Chinese technology. You're gonna tell me that if Russia had UFOs at their disposal, that Ukraine and that war would still be happening? Come on, come on. That is such horseshit. That is not technology that these countries clearly have. If they had it, they'd be using it, because at this point, it's all they have. You can't go nuclear because then everyone goes nuclear.
And I want people to recall what's going on here. Ukraine is halting, for the most part, Russian advances to basically crawl with losing 1,000 plus people a day with our 25-year-old technology. We have a lot better than that.
Yeah. But you know, there is this this notion that we should, as a society, want the war to end, right?
With the exception of there is only one end that Putin will accept, and that's people laying flowers on his casket. Putin he will not surrender. He will not back off.
You don't think that now, say President Trump, say Trump gets in, Do you think this war escalates or goes de-escalates?
Oh no, it'll escalate because then he'll feel he's empowered to attack Europe. But they are spending every dime they can to catch up.
So
And they are integrating and working together.
Okay, what if Harris gets in? How do we? I mean, we need to stop funding the war through a proxy. Like we
No, I
can't.
don't. I just don't agree with you because Putin is not going to look. Look. Listen to what Putin says because he is telling you the truth. He has taken over territory in the country of Georgia. He has taken over territory in the country of Moldova. He took over the Crimean Peninsula from Ukraine, and when he was signed a peace treaty, he attacked the rest of Ukraine a year later. This guy is constantly telling us who he is. He moved in to Syria and tried to kill the Americans there until they showed them, look, you don't want to do that. And 100 men mowed down close to 2,000 Russians in 2 days. Look, Putin is a guy that is a bully.
He is,
and he's now just to remind people, he's laid down 24 red lines, and we've allowed Ukraine to cross all of them. And what's happened? Nothing.
Right, and I so again, how can UFO disclosure help? Because there's got to be something that unites us that stops.
Well, I don't think UFO disclosure is going to change human nature.
You don't
we have to do that on our own,
right? And that would be a collective. So, and
they're not going to empower us with technology that enables the worst of us to act even worse. If they have any sense.
So, do you think that there is someone behind these? Okay, let's call them the secret keepers. Just for a namesake, these secret keepers. Do you think that they want this division and conflict to continue?
No, I don't think. But look, people have to understand how huge our government is. Not everybody in our government is united. If they were united, we wouldn't have the FBI leaking stuff that misled you about Hillary Clinton, or you wouldn't have the FBI telling stuff on Donald Trump before he ever went to trial when you're never supposed to allow evidence out. Look, there are always factions inside of a democratic government. You have the old and you have the new, you have the A and you have the B, and they fight each other even inside.
Yeah. But you don't see any good notion, a notion that I would bring up here in this as an example is we see that the UFO issue seems to be bipartisan for the most part. And I see that as a good thing.
No, it is a good thing, but that doesn't help us with our enemies.
Right.
Look, just because we wish Xi and Putin and what's his name in North Korea would be peaceful, they're not going to be. They don't have it in them.
So okay, now we've established that it's there's no sitting at the table with these people.
Yes, you'll sit at the table and they'll lie to you. They have 12 times in the last 12 months.
Right. So okay, if we can't do that anymore, then I mean, do we need to? Is it on us as a country or on NATO as an organization to then infiltrate and take these people out?
We took this job on at the Bretton Woods Agreement at the end of World War II.
We did.
Guaranteed all of our enemies and anybody else who would come that we would make the oceans free of piracy and allow them to move their goods around the world. And we agreed we would open our markets and set up financial institutions, and they could flow their goods into us and we would buy them without restriction. So that's breaking down a little bit, but that's still the governing structure of the world. And petrodollars is the international currency of exchange. And anybody that is daydreaming that China and India and BRICS are going to replace the dollar, they're living in a pipe dream. There's not enough money in those countries to replace the trillions of dollars flowing through the currency system. It's a pipe dream. It isn't going to happen. Until the United States falls, and it has
Right.
not had to fall hard. The Bretton Woods system may teeter, but I don't think it's going to fall.
No, I don't think it is either. I just get worried sometimes about the China the Belt and Road Initiative that they have
Yeah,
is
but they're bankrupt. People need to understand that China is bankrupt. They
right.
have over leveraged themselves with the dark road. And look, the United States is also full of corruption. Otherwise, you wouldn't have Dick Cheney's company sending all the stuff that's needed to go to do the war in Iraq.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
and whatever. And there's people on the other side too. I'm not saying it's one side, but corruption is part of government. What we want to do is minimize it.
And again, I see a path forward where the UFO issue, or just and because with the UFO issue, I think comes, and I think it's kind of implied that when we're talking about UFOs, we're not just talking about UFOs. We're talking about kind of everything, right? The paranormal.
We have to clearly demonstrate to our people and others, here's how the UFO stuff is going to ultimately change your life forever for the better. Then it will be uniting.
There you go. That's what I'm talking about. So using this as a catalyst, saying, guys, look, we may, we're fighting over land, we're fighting over resources. But let's look at this. We see an alternative. Now, maybe the US government has made mistakes in the past. And you know what? We're going to have to live with that. We're going to have to meet the US government or military industrial complex halfway on this, because the mistakes, they have been made already. There's no fixing it, right? But what we can do in the future is be more transparent, right? If you have a 4K video of a UFO and the way you got it was through a sensor system, maybe that shouldn't be operating in a certain area, scrub it all. Scrub all you need, but show me the fucking UFO. Right? So do whatever you need to do.
Well, look, I mean, you know what will happen? People will say it's CGI. If you don't know where it came from.
And that's the problem we're running up now, is we're running congruent with AI and AI advancement. I mean, your background is created by AI today, right? So,
and that's 2-year-old AI technology.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're talking, what happens when AI is so realistic that someone makes a video that's so compelling and shows like something like a UFO landing, or like a President Putin saying that he's about to launch nukes, and that somehow goes viral, and we're one miscalculation away from something bad happening. So, I just I have this ominous darkness that I feel, and I don't like. I see a way out, but it's got to be. We got to leave this mindset of MAD, like something that it has the acronym MAD. We are not. How are we so oblivious that mutually assured destruction is the only thing that's keeping us from being on this planet? It amazes me.
There's a lot of homage paid to MAD because it, quote, won the Cold War.
Yeah, well, it also pigeonholed us into this feeling that the only thing that's keeping us alive is the notion that I got nukes and you got nukes, and we don't want the world to end. So we're not going to exchange battle, but we're going to keep them in silos pointed at each other, so everyone feels on edge all the time.
Well, and you got one dictator threatening to use them every few minutes. Of course, yeah. I think one bluff calling after another. I don't think he's going to do it.
No, I don't.
I'm giving you my opinion based on years of geopolitical experience. I think Putin is in real trouble. And if we went all in with Ukraine, and I don't mean send troops, I mean give them what they need and the permissions they need, they would have control of their country in a year.
Right. But is it, I mean, Ukraine wasn't I guess we don't even have to go down that road because I think everybody knows that Ukraine wasn't free of corruption before this.
Oh, no, no,
But
no, they weren't, because Putin had his cronies installed in Ukraine.
right,
It's
just
not free of corruption now, just like the United States is not free of
not free of
corruption now.
corruption.
It's constant battle. People want to take advantage of any system. It's our job as citizens to fight against that.
Right. It absolutely is. No, it absolutely is. And with that being kind of said, in your opinion, how with how do I phrase this? Because with recent reports of military encounters with UAP, Elizondo's books come out. What do you think these incidents reveal about the nature of the phenomena? Because it we're going down a path here that ultimately it's got to lead to some sort of disclosure. So, what is the perception that you think has been revealed by things like Elizondo's book and other military accounts?
What I see now is a 70-year-old security system that is fraying at the edges and falling apart. And the people who have been held inside with a chain around their neck and a gun at their head and fear as the main control authority are going, F it, I'm going to tell the story. And man, somebody I thought would never, ever open their mouth is Harold Malmgren. Harold Malmgren, people don't know how important this guy is. He is so important, and he has been around for 4 presidents advising them and other things. Harald Malmgren. And he started talking about the things he knows. And I'm telling you, that is a name that will cause people in both parties, military, industrial, etc., to sit up and take notice.
I'm trying to look it up right now. Can you give me the lowdown?
Yeah, he's on X, and he's starting to tweet out things he was told about non-human intelligence and that he knows from being on the inside.
So are you in contact with him?
No, we exchange stuff on X, but he and I are not buddies. I briefed him once in a skiff about near the end of Star Wars after Reagan.
Yeah, that's
he was definitely involved, and Bran Farron and Lowell Woods and a bunch of other people were there, and I gave him a briefing. And so that was my only personal contact with Harold ever, but I have known who he is ever since.
Well, I would love to try to get him on the show and have a conversation with him.
I don't know that he would do that, but you should try.
Yeah, I'll maybe put in a good word for me because I'd love to have a conversation with him. But okay, I mean, so these guys like David Grush, Lou Elizondo. I mean, they keep calling them whistleblowers, but they're not technically whistleblowers because
no, they are the technical legal definition of whistleblower inside the United States government, which means they have detected something they believe is illegal, unethical, or against the rules of whatever. They are required to make a disclosure under protection to the Inspector General of the department they're in. Then they are officially covered by the Whistleblower Act. And within 30 days, the Inspector Generals are to give a report to the committees in Congress that cover that agency. So they can all be outed. And they are, in fact, that kind of official whistleblower.
Okay. Well, but they're not, they're also, like,
they're not leakers.
Yeah, they're going through DOPSR, which is the DoD pre-publication office.
Yeah, they're not a leaker if they're going through DOPSR.
Right. So, like, there's a difference between a whistleblower like Edward Snowden, who most would argue did a pretty traitorous thing. Some see it as like an act of defiance or like
everybody likes Robin Hood.
Yeah, exactly.
Except that guy did a lot of damage.
But he
Damage
did.
people will never know how bad it was.
Right. He did compromise a lot of intel officers. He compromised a lot. He did. But
well, let me tell you what compromising intel officers mean, especially if some of them were our agents. They died.
They died. Yes. It's terrible. And that's what happens. And you know, because we look at the internet and these devices and, you know, the social media platforms that connect us, but we don't realize all the time that there are actual human people that that lives are at stake, who you can't. And it's one thing to alert us of a danger, but it's another thing to break national security, because that is a problem, right? I mean, now he's living in Russia, of all places, right? And I mean, I see that as I don't know. I Snowden makes me, I go back and forth because it's like, I mean, are we any better off with that information? Because nothing seemed to change.
No, it didn't.
Nothing
change.
changed.
No, it's different, but still stuff goes on. But
Right.
now it's more strictly controlled under more legal cover.
Right. But I think most people know that you start talking about Febreze, you're going to start getting ads for Febreze. But that's generally
But that's because you've allowed these silly telephone companies to have permission. The United States government does not have that permission.
right.
So they record stuff, but that doesn't mean they look at it. So collection is defined as taking stuff that's stored once you have evidence that you can put in front of a court, or you can assure no American U.S. person is involved, then you can look at it and see what it contains.
Right.
The reason is we would not be safe if they could not do that. We literally couldn't. A nuclear weapon could be inside the United States, put together by bad actors, and we would never know. But hopefully, with that kind of stuff, with the slightest hint, you can go to a court. You can say, here's what we know, and we think it means this. And the FISA court gives you the okay, and then you can go look. But that's only works because it's already in storage, not looked at. And this is controlled by the most unbelievable control mechanisms. You can't go touch that stuff without alarms going off.
Absolutely. And this whole TikTok thing, but it brings that into question. I saw someone just mention it. TikTok, I mean, you look at the differences in TikTok in China versus TikTok in the United States. There is a drastic difference in the companies. The Chinese have like educational seminar, like times and stuff like that, and then the United States TikTok is all just like, you know, it's people are genuinely worried about it. So far as they might even ban TikTok if it's not sold to an American company. At least
everybody pick up your phone.
Okay,
drag it down, get TikTok. Hold your finger on it, and then go to the bottom and hit delete app.
Delete it. Yes, I would have to agree on this one, because it is. Everybody knows that if you are a company in China, you are working for the CCP, no matter what, at the end of the day. So that means all our information. And if you start going into the laws that you sign up for, you know, the ones that nobody reads, the terms of service of TikTok, you'd be fucking frightened to see what they collect about you on
and
all your.
Guarantee the People's Liberation Army does whatever they want with that data.
So and we know that data is the new thing, right? That's
there is a reason. There's a reason that illegal assets of the Chinese government inside the United States and storefronts set up by the Chinese government outnumber our total intelligence community workforce.
Jesus.
There's a reason. People need to wake the F up.
Jesus.
China is not our friend.
No, they are not. But they are sly. They're very sly because they somehow found out how to make this. They're very smart, is what I should say, and that's what I meant earlier when when we had our eye on the war on terror. China kind of just they worked on trying to get better, right? They send kids here into Boston to get trained at Harvard, and then they go back to China with that information. You know what I mean? With that education. So
when I was at Virginia Tech, I had to call in the FBI and the U.S. Naval Investigative Services because of all the Chinese people that were breaking into my office.
Yeah, it's like I live in arguably Boston, the Ivy League area around here. And I say this with no prejudice, no racial thing, but there is a large Chinese population in Boston, and they're mostly in that college age range. It's a statistic, and it's actually quite alarming as well, because you don't know with some of them. You look into the scholarships that they're given.
Well, here's the theory that enough of them will learn that they have spent nearly 2 decades being lied to by their government about what the United States is actually like, and will go back and change minds.
And I think that's what's happening. You see the people, the younger people uprising now, saying, "Wait a second, this is not how it should be. This is not right."
I mean, they're just sitting at home with mom and dad doing nothing. Can't afford an apartment, can't find a job. They have a 25% unemployment rate in those under 25 or 30. I can't remember.
Right. And I think it's a huge statistic, but males, it's 7 to 1, and they're having a reproduction problem, and there's a serious age gap, that is going to cripple that country if it's not. I don't think anyone sees a way that they can solve it actually, aside from immigration. And
look, a large portion of the problems in China are solved by the ultimate horror of realizing the truth about demographics. China is undergoing the largest demographic collapse in the history of humanity.
Absolutely.
Its population decrease is happening so fast, they can't even keep up with it, and they're having to constantly correct their records. So there are hundreds of cities built to house all of the new young people working at all these industries, selling stuff to the West, that are empty. Hundreds of empty cities. Nothing to do with them.
Yep. And honestly, the factories that they do have, they have to put nets outside of them because the people are so miserable. They don't have love because there's no women to love, right? All they have is work, 72 hours a week, and they have to live at the place they work making Apple iPhones. They have to put nets on the buildings from people jumping. It's fucking terrible. It's fucking and people in the United States complain and they complain and they complain. It's like, you don't know how good you have it.
Well, they need to stop buying Russian and Chinese propaganda.
Yeah.
Look, we're not saints. We are definitely not saints. We had no business going into Iraq for weapons of mass destruction that didn't exist, and we spent $2 trillion doing it. No, we are not saints, but we need to understand that we have real enemies, and they're going to try to do whatever they can to mess with us.
Absolutely. And because we're the big dog, people are always going to fight upward. And that is just the nature of reality.
Every time I do this, people call me a warmonger for a month, but I'm not. I hate war with passion.
War is terrible. I mean, like that's another thing is war is terrible, but it honestly, we got to get, and that's what I worries, ancient cultures, listen, you think wars, I mean, they were constantly, battling each other, ancient cultures, but I kind of think that there was ancient, do you believe that there might have been an ancient culture that was advanced, like, say, I hate to say the A word, like Atlantis or Lemuria, that maybe technology wasn't like this, like our phones, but it was more conscious based?
I think we keep digging deeper with better tools, and archaeologists are finding almost always things are much older, happened much earlier than we think.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, go back. I always say this one wrong. Göbekli Tepe, right? That is really, really divided people, and it's pushing back dates. And have you heard about this? All right, this is switching gears totally, but have you heard that rumor about NASA briefing Congress behind closed doors about a craft that is potentially heading our way?
I can't find a source I believe that says that.
So, you don't think there's any merit to it?
NASA has compartments, and I'm sure that they have to brief Congress on them. But that particular rumor, I don't see any evidence for it other than a few podcasts.
Yeah. And the vetted guy, Patrick, he had on that guy that he's like, I can't remember. I've never heard of him. And he was saying that he had heard, or he was being told that Congress was being told behind closed doors that they found a craft. And this is right around the same time that NASA announces that they may have found city lights on a planet that's like 100.
NASA hasn't told that.
Right. And so
that's not a true story.
Right. So we see this whole disinformation, and it's like, you really don't know what's true or not. And it's like, it's frustrating. It's frustrating because
there is nothing more frustrating to me than people in the public being lied to by governments and representatives, etc. And yeah. I've gotten to the point where I'm not an absolute free speech person. I believe it is time, and I wrote and put up on Twitter for everybody that wants to go look at it, a proposed constitutional amendment that will forbid people in government, whether elected or employed, from lying to the American people. It's lengthy. It covers every base, and it would totally change the world.
Really?
Yeah, I don't care if you don't tell me stuff. Just don't lie to me to cover it up.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I could get on board with something like that. Yeah. Like, if there's some things that I don't think that we should know, I think some things are better, left to the professionals, right? Like operations, for instance, the one to capture bin Laden, that stuff, dude, I'm happy to let you guys do that and do what you need to do, right?
I do not want to endanger SEAL Team 6 lives by knowing stuff.
Right, exactly. Means and methods, I get it. But if you have a 4K,
the best ones, people don't even really know who they are.
Absolutely, yeah. If
the best of those military teams, they are wild. They're awesome. and I won't even say their name.
Right. Like some of those strike teams. I mean, they
Whatever.
are
I won't even hint.
right. They, they're the type of teams that could topple nations overnight and change regimes overnight. And you don't hear their names. They're not in the news, that they're there. And I guess what? I'm happy. I love that they exist because it makes me feel a little bit safer.
Look,
But
it's better to have small, specialized, highly trained, highly capable people who are trained how to operate in these close environments without destroying a whole building, so we don't have to go to war every time somebody crosses us.
yes,
And
exactly.
every one of those people is a volunteer.
Absolutely. And would it be out of the realm of possibilities that some sort of team has been assembled? Do you think it's out of the realm of possibilities that some advanced team uses some sort of reverse engineered UFO technology that people see sometimes?
Yeah, I think it's possible.
You think it's possible?
I think it's possible.
I think it's possible that we have some sort of man-made UFO, at least one model that is, I would say it's probably the triangle. It's probably the TR3B, if I something similar to it, if I would have to say. But there's definitely, I think there's something.
Look, Lala and I have had 3 triangles fly right over us since I moved here.
3.
Yeah, just what can I say? They are real. That's the end of it.
Period.
Unmistakable what we saw.
And again, you're open about where you're in the area of an active military base.
And very active. They fire artillery and other guns and bombs over there multiple days during the week. They do leave us alone on weekends.
Well, everyone's gonna have the weekend. Everyone's gonna go home. Looking ahead, what do you envision for the future of UFO disclosure?
Okay, so we know from interview. Look, Matt Laszlo is doing a great job.
Yeah, ask a poll.
He's going around and doing the great stuff, and he's out at almost all the upcoming hearings. And we're hearing from one of the sponsors, Senator Rounds, that the UAPDA is not dead.
Yeah,
that it was going to make it into the package, but it will be brought up as an amendment in the lame duck session. Nobody wants to take any kind of risk in the next 30 days until the election is over.
Yeah, absolutely. And
I believe all hell's going to break loose soon after.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
So, what do you mean by that?
Sorry, came in. I had her open the door because I'm burning up.
No, that's okay. We're gonna be winding down right now. But what do you mean all hell's gonna break loose?
Oh, learning stuff, disclosure.
Oh,
but I still think it's going to be dominated by leak and nothing official.
Okay, so I mean, because the shit that you're seeing, right? Is it? I mean, we are. What can the amount of evidence, the amount of testimony, the amount of witnesses, the amount of people, the global consciousness is shifting, and I think it's shifting towards the fact that more people believe than don't believe now.
Well, that really does impact. That has an impact on the collective consciousness.
And that's what I was gonna say. Like, we know that they've done studies where, they've talked to water and then frozen it. And, when they spoke words like love or intent, good positive words, the ice, the crystals were beautiful. But when they spoke words like fear or hatred or violence, like the crystals would form and they'd be all messy. So our intent, our collective intent It literally matters. Our words matter. They affect the.
I have personally witnessed, after I bought Lala a bunch of raised beds, her go out and try to talk to and love on and heal a plant. I went, hey, that thing is dead. And 2 days later, it'll be alive.
No way.
Yeah, I promise you, God is my witness. I don't have a reason to lie about it because I'm just telling you, I'm as shocked beyond compare as anybody. I'm constantly having that I don't understand reality thrown in my face.
That's unbelievable. And that's again, I love that because it really does send that message that love, right? It's the transcending universal combatant to hate and to violence. So maybe that's the key, right?
Well, love is definitely a compound. Well, we do need. Oh man, look, it is painful for me to go on UFO Twitter and X Spaces and listen to the battles going on between people who are ultimately without agency to impact anything except stroking their own egos.
Ego.
It bothers me a lot.
It does.
I just try to sound like the words of sanity.
Yeah, no, and you're often what I love about you is that you're not afraid to speak your mind, but you also know when to filter and when to speak to the general public versus you separate your thoughts. Like, your fleeting thoughts are very,
I filter them.
Exactly. So you're a genuine guy, and you've seen some crazy stuff, especially recently. Like, I'm sure you're seeing it. I watch your Twitter, I watch your Facebook. Lala's always posting content about the stuff.
Never ending. It's never ending around here.
That's what crazy. I want to come out there. I want to see it. I want to experience it because I've had some experiences recently that they're sending me in a certain direction. And, that's why I reached out to you. And, what advice do you have for people in the field of science? This will be the final, question. In the field of science, young kids, younger guys, younger females that want to get into the science of.
I tell you, my strongest possible recommendation is you're not going to learn shit sitting in front of your computer. Okay, that's number one. The second is, if I'm not going to sit in front of my computer, what am I going to do? Do a little research. Find a person who is open to public access, even if it costs a few bucks, for you to go out and observe this stuff with that person. It's worth the money because you're going to leave there changed.
Yeah.
You're going to have trouble allowing your biases and your logic overcome what you experience. And one of my favorite sayings is, if you ruled out all the things that are impossible, the only thing left must be the answer.
Yep. And yeah, absolutely. It must be. And
you are not going to learn anything about this field sitting in front of a computer except what somebody else tells you. Don't be a prisoner.
Right. Escape the echo chamber, if you will.
Get out of the echo chamber and take a vacation and go look. Yeah.
And because for scientists, we talk about the lack of funding, right? So more what I meant was for them, if they want to get into the science of UAPs, but they're in a university, how do they try to be on the cutting edge?
At a research university, every member of the research faculty is an independent entity. It's their own little LLC. If they can go get funding, they can do it. unless it violates university policy.
Okay. So we need more people pitching ideas and pitching for funding.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So so guys, maybe that's our next move as civilians, is to push for more funding for civilian. Because if we're not going to get the president to come out and say, my fellow Americans, we're not alone, then we need to go do it ourselves.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, look, people need to realize how much money they're spending on all this crap we're using to talk on stuff, and realize if they threw $10 to somebody that's doing good research and got 100 other people to throw a few bucks, that stuff might happen.
Yep.
You have to figure out a way to cross the Rubicon.
But there's a problem in the UFO field, is when you start asking for money, they call you and they label you a grifter. That's a real problem. It's a real problem.
Well, they just need to get over it, because nothing happens with a research person of any merit that doesn't cost money. Nothing.
Yep.
Because they have to require to pay for their lab, some of their salary, and their students to do the work.
Yeah.
And that's how we educate kids in this country, through schools.
Right. And we hold guys like Dr. Gary Nolan in high regard, but he came into the field after he had already built a super successful career, you know, like
not everybody who has 11 Nobel Prize nominations is a bad guy.
Right. So we need to get more funding and more, more people involved in this on the scientific side and the astronomical side, and then honestly the philosophical side, because there are going to be philosophical implications from disclosure, and we're going to need people there.
Religious, social, physics, mathematics, engineering, all of these things are involved. Go find what you care about. Find somebody who you believe in and help them out.
Exactly. So, and like what I like to tell everyone is, I found my way. My way is like talking to people like Bob. I collect stories, right? I help facilitate that. So I found my job. You found yours. So thank you so much, Mr. Bob McGwier. You've been amazing. Thank you for spending almost 2 hours. We're coming up on 2 hours. I usually only go an hour and a half, but I always love having a nice conversation with you. You are absolutely amazing and a huge cherish among the UFO community.
Thank you very much.
So where can people find you? I'll have all your links in the description below, but if just offhand.
So I'm on Bob McGwier on Facebook. I'm Bob McGwier _ N4HY on X, and those are by far the easiest ways to find me.
Okay. All right. And yeah, and I highly suggest that you keep out for him. Watch out for him and what he's doing, because he's always posting great content and is genuinely surrounded by the phenomena, well connected into the community, like with such people as Chris Bledsoe and others. So like I said, I always want to be on your good side, buddy. And with that being said, everyone out there in the podcast sphere, make sure to leave us a review on Apple or Spotify. It really, really helps. It's free. Also, if you're watching on YouTube or X or any one of those, make sure to give a follow, like, and share. And we love you. Keep your eye on the sky. You never know what might fly by. All right, Bob, see you next time.
See ya. Take care, Ty.
Of course, you as well.